Training camp will be here before you know it, just a couple of weeks away now. Thank you for joining us for Countdown to Camp. I'm Phil Milani alongside Andrew Mason and Steve Atwater. We'll be going over the top storylines affecting the Broncos heading into training camp. And guys, let's start with the most obvious one, Case Keenum coming in, joining the Broncos this offseason. Steve, what is he going to bring to the table that the Broncos were missing the last couple of years?
Well, I think number one, stability. Number two, leadership. And number three, the ability to make decisions quickly and get the ball out of his hands. That'll help the receivers out. It'll help the linemen out. It's going to make our offense much better than it was last year.
You agree? I mean, we've seen some of those leadership things already.
Yeah, you can see just watching practices as we did during May and June, how much more crisply things operate on offense because Case Keenum was at the controls. The decisions, the first read decisions in particular, were a lot quicker. He did a good job getting the offense set up, and it was interesting to see how quickly they moved into no huddle, some advanced type of stuff in a scheme that's been overhauled quite a bit. And a lot of the reason they were able to get to that point was because of what Case Keenum can bring on the field in terms of maturity, leadership, knowledge of the offense, and the ability to get everybody on the same page.
The other thing, what about decision making, Steve? Last year, 22 interceptions for the Broncos, 3 quarterbacks. That was second worst in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's one of the areas I think that Case Keenum will help out the most. He didn't have very many. I want to say
7 interceptions last year.
7 interceptions last year. Amazing. And if he can have that same type of productivity here, man, look for this offense to do really great things. And I know our defense will be extremely happy about that as well.
Yeah, because how many times did we see it last year? Interception, the defense was like, oh.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the turnovers, especially the interceptions, was a big part of the reason why the Broncos were 31st in the league in passer rating as a team last year. And so let's say Case Keenum is not quite what he was in Minnesota. Let's say somewhere between Minnesota Case and what he was with the Rams and Texans. That will still represent a pretty dramatic improvement in terms of production and efficiency for the Broncos from the quarterback position, and that might get them exactly where they need to go.
What is the likelihood that he can repeat that season last year? That was the best year of his career by far.
I agree, and I think he can do it, especially I think he has somewhat of a say-so in the offense that they're installing. I would imagine that Bill Musgrave is working with him to do some of the things that he does well and some of the things that he did well when he was in Minnesota. So I really anticipate him coming out having at least as good a year as he had last year.
But getting there, I think, will require help from tight ends, running backs, and whoever emerges as the slot receiver. Those were guys that Case Keenum used very effectively in Minnesota. So players like Royce Freeman, Devontae Booker, Jake Butt, Jeff Hireman, Deshaun Hamilton, Cortland Sutton, those are going to be crucial guys in determining whether Case Keenum can be what he was in Minnesota.
Well, one thing that we've already seen so far, he's been thrown with the wide receivers during this little bit of a break period. That's something that dates back to the Peyton Manning area, so we got to be happy about seeing some of that leadership there. All right, this is the first in a series counting down to camp. Up next, we'll be talking about who will be the starting running back. Until then, for Steve Atwater, Andrew Mason, I'm Phil Milani.